to affect the universities? That is COVID going to affect international countries and then to learn or study?
Yes, I have no doubt that in the short term there will be an effect. There will be fewer students flying to different countries to study. And this will be both in terms of full degree students, but also in terms of those students that do short-term mobilities at universities.
Right.
So it will affect the students have, but equally it will affect universities in terms of the footprint that these students leave when they visit these universities.
Right.
So we are hoping, though, that in the medium term that this will be addressed, and that, as the effects of the pandemic pass, that we will slowly find a new normal. Right. However, I think the economic situation of the world will also continue to play a role in the medium term. Right. And academic mobility may never quite get back to where they were prior to the pandemic.
Right. And so we know that internationalization, of course, boosts profits for universities. Is it time for us to diversify our resource mobilization strategies as African universities? Because we know this is a traditional means of getting money funding universities. And so is this a way that we should find new strategies which African universities can mobilize resources?
Yes, I think we have to work smarter. We have to find opportunities in this crisis. In every crisis, there are threats, but equally there are opportunities. And I think this is our opportunity to deal with issues like the bandwidth right. on the African continent, the cost of data, accessibility. And we've got to actually advertise and market the continent far better. In spite of attracting numbers of students to the continent, I don't think we've optimized the opportunities that we have. And very often in Africa, it hasn't been a for-profit motive. It's largely been an intercultural dimension, right. an academic dimension, quality dimension that has driven internationalization. And I think we need to find a balance between the two. Countries like Australia, New Zealand can remarkably well with internationalization right. and the contribution it makes to the economy. And I think Africa has this opportunity to reimagine itself as a destination for international students and find this balance between the different motives and rationales for internationalization.
Right. And so for us, for some of us, we are traveling to different countries. We are traveling to specific institutions because of the culture, because of what we know the school stands for. And so I have a friend who has this affinity to go to Oxford because we know what Oxford stands for. And so how would it be now that probably you can even get to Oxford, but you will not have a feel of having a lot? How do we manage that for you with it because of the pandemic?
Irene, I think university campuses will be different in the next few years.
Right.
We will have somewhat less diversity. But I think there's also a role for the local provide that communities in different countries should also step in and be part of that experience. I think universities need to reach out into the local communities around universities to play a larger role. Right. And in many countries, there's a rich diversity, even in these local communities. So what might change at the university campus level can be mitigated by reaching out into society.
Yeah, that brings out the point of the importance of societies that we live in during these times. And so I wanted to ask, how prepared are universities in terms of organizational and systemic management to receive international students if the COVID still persists in the coming years?
I think universities are developing protocols in the months since the start of this pandemic.
Right.
We've become more knowledge, and knowledge is power. And so we've learned many things about what can limit the spread of the virus. We've learned about hand hygiene. We've learned about the use of masks. We've learned about social distancing. And I have no doubt that these protocols will help us in a safer environment. But for as long as the virus is around, and for as long as we don't have any effective vaccine or facilities, there will always be a threat. Deny this. I think being denialist about the threat actually is not a healthy approach to it. We have to accept that we are dealing with the challenges, and we have to do the best we can to operationalize what we do within strict protocols.
Right. And so since we are talking about operationalizing and strict protocols, we are also talking about a healthcare system. I know for South Africa, there is a robust healthcare system, and then we know of the others in Africa. And so do you think that because of our healthcare systems, it would prevent some students or some lecturers from flying into Africa, especially to come continue their education?
For now, that may be the case because we are really in a very acute phase of the challenge. But I think going forward, that shouldn't be a problem. If we have a vaccine, for example, if we have effective treatment, I'm sure that these two will be available on the African. But we have to think about prevention rather than cure. There are countries that have dealt with this problem without spending huge amounts of money. I always look at the Cuban health system. Care approach, what we to evolve into many Western countries, enforce primary health and weapon rather than a very expensive.
Right. And so we are to open our borders. We are ready to open our borders to students. We are talking about in our.
I don't think. I think we really have to see a little further.
Sure.
And we've got to allow this time. We might be able to comment on that, but there are some countries where the virus allows students from those countries into our borders now would be very, very risky. Even testing 100%, because sometimes people don't test positive at the time that they enter your country, and later on become spreaded. So I think for now, it's erring on the side of being conservative is probably a better approach. Let's contain the situation. Let's see how the medical options evolve, and then probably in the next 6 months, a better idea on and do it as safely as possible without risking the lives of local communities.
Right. And so we know that we are not ready, and so what we are doing is virtual education. Do you think as a continent we are fully prepared to go full virtual education? And what will be some of the challenges that we are going to face if that will be the only option for us as at now?
I will answer, Irene, is that but having said that, the inequalities, devices and data provision in his school system,
Right.
and they went back to opening schools because schools did not have access to devices and data. We've seen similar challenges in the UK. I don't think education is meant to be delivered completely on virtual platforms.
Right.
The type of engagement you have at university campuses is an essential part of education. You know, we need the formal curriculum to educate that we envisage students. And besides, there are certain programs that don't lend themselves to be entirely virtually driven. I look at health sciences programs, engineering programs, science programs, programs that need industry experience.
Right.
Those programs forms. But I option that balance between online engagement and activities that go on in person on university campuses.
Right. And so we know this is one part of the challenges. So can you also give us more of the challenges that we are facing in regards to internationalization of higher education in Africa?
Well, I think one, you know, the fact that international travel has come to a grinding halt is probably a big challenge. And I think we might well find that even when the pandemic is over, that some airlines just don't take to the skies the way they used to. And we might find less air connectivity than we've had previously. So you might find some air being serviced the way that they were. So, you know, even international travel will be a challenge.
Right.
I think the global economy being on about mobility programs. I think the funding at universities will also be challenged. Because are challenged, the funding to universities also become a challenge.
Right.
And I think there will be competing issues. Some meetings may not be seen, but we as international education in different terms, we see is now even more.
Right.
It's about the world working together. And if anything, this pandemic has shown that no one country can deal with their issues in isolation. The need to have that standing, to create global citizens, to who understand the world in its entirety as a whole rather than of its some parts, has become even more important.
Ask, what are some of the strategies you would share as an what are some of the strategies that universities on the plane to when the
and that is about using university has been engaged in collaborative now, and we already have a number of projects that have been going on during more forms of collaborative international learning. We are also broadening of international so that it's accessible to far more of our students and our staff than previously. We're also looking at conferences taking online forms of delivery where information collaboration of not being able to visit each other readily. And I think the other form of internationalization that has often been underplayed is the whole issue of internationalization at home, where we can use local diversity to teach internationalization.
So thank you, Dr. Lavern Samuels, for joining us today. And before we wrap up, can you give your final words to African universities, since internationalization is very important for us to move on in higher education?
Irene, I think what I said earlier is important. It's about finding your place. And as we reimagine the world during this time, it's for us to take this opportunity to take our right international community of universities in the academic world. And I think we've got to look at opportunities and seize them. There is a really nice lion and the story, and it goes like this. For as long as the lion does not have a storyteller, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
Right.
So we need to step up and we need to narrate our own story, our place as a unique offering in higher education.
Sure.
We have expertise that are often unsung heroes of the academic world, and we've got to step up and play our role. And there is no better as the world steps back and reflects on where it is and reimagines itself.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Lavern Samuels, for joining us this morning. It has been an insightful conversation, and then we know that we will come back to you in anything on internationalization. We are grateful for your time, and then best wishes to you and Durban University in South Africa. And everything goes on smoothly for us here in Africa.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to our future engagement and our best wishes from Durban University of Technology to all our colleagues who are on this talk show today, watching it live. And we look
very well. This has been AAU Talks on AAU TV, and my makeup has been by EL_news_makeup on Instagram. El, thank you for my beautiful face beat. It has been AAU Talks on AAU TV. Keep watching. EL.